They are finally addressing this, everybody. Lawmakers in Congress from both parties are showing support for another relief plan. The new plan would actually directly provide thousands of dollars to millions of low-income households that are struggling to pay for their monthly expenses. But some Republicans have signaled that they would like to implement strict eligibility requirements. So make sure to keep watching this, everybody, to find out what stimulus checks are going to be sent to you. Now, first of all, everybody, a bipartisan group of House members are planning on a recent legislative deal and plans to work on a proposal to beef up an existing tax credit for families with young children. The Problem Solvers Caucus has a group, and they're planning to launch a subcommittee to work on issues associated with the child tax credit. It's currently providing up to $2,000 per child, and it's a smaller benefit than one in place during 2021. It will be cut in half and applied to many fewer households, everybody. But a Ways and Means Committee member said the child tax credit came up during discussions about a debt limit this year, as the Problem Solvers Caucus aimed to build consensus on the measures that would help the American people out. The Problem Solvers Caucus includes 64 members, evenly split between Republicans and Democrats, who aim to work across the aisle. The group typically requires 75% support among its members to endorse proposals. Whether a bipartisan tax package comes together this year may hinge on negotiations around the child tax credit. A representative said he has an interest in aiding the low-income households that earn too little to get the benefits under the bill, and he has convincingly won recent elections and is still on the Democrats' target list for next year. He plans to ask representatives to be involved in the child tax credit discussions. And when Democrats were considering extending the child tax credit expansion, he said the benefits should be better targeted to benefit low-income households for a longer period of time, and the current maximum credit applies to $400,000. Even representatives specifically praised the party proposal to permanently make the credit fully refundable, which would have meant that the families who owe little or nothing in federal income taxes could still claim the full amount. Top Republicans have said they're not interested in the revival of Democratic signature expansion. Still, there were hints at a finances, taxation, and IRS oversight committee hearing last week of potential interest in working across the aisle on the child credit. Even some subcommittee chairmen actually agreed on this, and economic growth has benefited the wealthy while keeping middle class behind and lowering the income thresholds for the poverty. Now, the senators are holding a series of roundtable discussions for lawmakers to work on the child credit and ways to alleviate the poverty. And so far, this Congressional Budget Office has estimated that making the current law and current child tax credit permanent will cost $600 billion plus through the fiscal year 2033. While enlarging it back to the 2021 policy, it can cost up to $100 billion a year just to get things done. One-time payments will be arriving for millions of Americans soon, and the administration has approved $39 billion in relief. State lawmakers are now approving legislation that would allow more low-income households to receive SNAP benefits.
Wednesday, the Senate has voted on 8 amendments here on the floor, adopted 7 more by voice vote. This is how the process should work. Finally, I'll also keep working with the Republican leader, with Chair Reid and Ranking Member Wicker, on a second manager's package that will have more accomplishments both sides can embrace. And I appreciate the cooperation and good faith of my colleagues from both sides of the aisle. Mr. President, I've said repeatedly that the NDA is an opportunity for the Senate to show we can work on the biggest issues facing our country through bipartisanship, cooperation, honest debate. That's what we've seen play out so far this year on the floor. Bipartisanship. The NDA process in this chamber is a welcome departure from the contentious, chaotic, and partisan race to the bottom we saw in the House. And, as I have also said, if we continue embracing bipartisanship, we'll finish our work on the NDAA before the start of the August state work period. We wish to finish the NDA as soon as we can. There is no reason for delay. We aren't quite there yet. There's still some more work to be done. But we are close. I thank my colleagues for their cooperation, and the Senate will continue working on the NDAA until the job is done. On the IRA anniversary, when we passed the Inflation Reduction Act last year, I said here on the floor that it would endure as one of the defining legislative feats of the 21st century. And just 1 year later, the IRA is paying huge dividends for the American people, for our economy, and
fee, but never paid it will have to change and charge to remove it. And but failure to pay for penalties are not eligible for refund. The IRS has said that the vast majority of refunds will be sent via check, while a percentage of taxpayers will receive their refunds through direct deposit. In order to qualify for a refund under the program, individuals and businesses have to have filed their late 2019 and 2020 tax returns on or before September 30th. The Taxpayer Advocate Service is urging taxpayers to file electronically, and Manchin has also criticized Joe Biden's student loan forgiveness plan, arguing there are other ways to support student borrowers. Manchin said the plan is excessive. Millions of people are actually eligible to receive a stimulus check that they may have not received. The IRS has announced that some money will be sent out to people very, very soon. And according to the U.S. Department of Treasury, a report that was published showed that almost 645,000 people who were eligible for the third round of stimulus checks had not gotten their payments since mid of September. The American Rescue Plan authorized the federal government to send up to $1,400 for each person who qualified for this check. The money was technically able to support to get that bill through the evenly divided Senate after winning concessions from Democratic leaders. But in the new letter, Nancy Pelosi, Steny Hoyer are asking him not to include the pending reforms championed by Manchin into a stopgap funding bill that measures that Congress is expected to take up this month. Without a stopgap funding measure, lawmakers are ready for the government shutdown on October 1st. The opposition from Democrats is a significant problem. If the group follows through in the letter, Democrats might not have the votes to pass a government funding bill. When they announced the agreement on the major climate tax and healthcare bill, Chuck Schumer and Manchin said they had reached a deal to pass permitting reform by October to secure Manchin's vote. A new deadline has been announced. The deadline marks the last day that eligible Americans can claim up to $1,000 in direct stimulus cash. Many lawmakers are debating on whether some provisions should be cut from the Inflation Reduction Act. Maryland residents, everybody, who are seeking to file a claim for up to $1,000 in student loan debt relief have just 5 days left to submit their paperwork. The deadline to submit an application is September 15th, after which the state will close the portal. The tax credit is intended to help eligible residents who took out student loans to pay for their college tuition, and tax credits will be available even if the applicant didn't graduate. To become eligible, residents must have claimed Maryland residency on their 2022 tax filings and have incurred at least $20,000 in student loans from either an undergraduate or a graduate program with at least $5,000 in outstanding debt at the time of the application. Maryland residents who did not attend a state school may still be eligible for relief, but they may not receive as large as the tax credit. Those who received relief may be asked to prove that they used the full amount of the tax credit to go toward their student loan payments. Otherwise, they may be asked to repay the credit. Alaska residents will also begin to receive $3,200 checks in just 11 days. The $3,200 payments for eligible people were included as a provision in the annual budget. The state annual budget was approved by the legislature early this year. The checks will begin to be appearing in the bank accounts of eligible residents on September 20th, with all payments being delivered by the end of the year. Bernie Sanders has also said that he would oppose a short-term investment in the government funding bill if the Democratic leaders attach